A day of celebration in Regina. Saskatchewan Roughriders players and coaches just as excited as the fans who came out to greet them for Tuesday's Grey Cup parade. Receiver Joe even taking some cheerleading lessons. The sights and sounds of the Grey Cup parade and what the riders and the fans had to say coming up.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, November 18th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. Rider Nation painted the streets of Regina green Tuesday as fans joined the team for a championship parade. Hundreds showed up to celebrate the long-awaited homecoming of the Grey Cup, and our Aliyah Marco Omene was there to take it all in.
It's a moment 12 years in the making. The Grey Cup heading down Albert Street in Regina, fans packing the road for a view.
Let's go Riders!
Going to school was out of the question for Hunter Wessing, instead joining fans as the Riders arrived at the Legislative Building. It's a moment he's waited his whole life for.
Back in 2013, last time we won, I was born the day before we actually won that cup. My parents were planning on going, but since I was born, they couldn't. So ever since then, I was a Rider fan, and I knew I would love football.
He's never stopped hoping the Riders would clinch another Grey Cup, and he's not alone. Many fans say they're loyal to the team. This woman even dyed her hair in support.
It's been this way since 2013, so when we won the Grey Cup in 2013, I put it green for support of the Riders.
Another longtime fan remembers the first time Riders won the Grey Cup 59 years ago.
I remember our first daughter, our first child was born. She's 59 now. A few days later, the Riders won the Grey Cup, and we lived in a basement suite on Winnipeg. I opened the back door, and the horns and the shouting.
The Riders once again thanked fans for their unwavering support. Head coach Corey Mace says this year's championship win is just the beginning.
They keep talking about how there was only 4 championships in Riders history. Hey, we got 5 right now, and we ain't willing to stop, baby. Let's keep it rolling.
It's a sentiment Riders quarterback Trevor Harris shares.
This is your guys' moment as well. We've always had the best fans in the league, and now we've got the best dang team in the league to match you guys, man. We thank you so much.
Let's go.
Yeah! Although the season has come to an end, Riders fans will continue to revel in the win. Aliyah Marco Omene, CBC News, Regina.
Saskatoon's mayor thinks it's time for a new model to fund cities. Speaking at a business luncheon, Mayor Cynthia Block fielded questions about next week's city budget talks. Saskatoon City Hall is wrestling with a property tax increase of 8.23%, the highest in the city's history. But Block says many cities are struggling to pay for services without high tax hikes.
We want a new deal. Cities right across the country know that's necessary. And I think the only way we get there is if we lean in together, all the cities together. But imagine if we also had our business communities with us, if we had our provinces with us. I think that there's a lot we can do to make this a fairer system.
Block says the property tax model dates back to the horse and buggy era. She points out nearly half of this year's property tax increase comes from policing, but she says she will back the police budget because people are concerned about safety. Hopes for reopening Prince Albert's pulp mill have been extinguished. The mill site has been sold to a remediation company, and plans to build an oriented strand board operation on the site are on hold as the threat of tariffs has scared off investors. Lisa Rism has that story.
It's been nearly 20 years since Weyerhaeuser closed Prince Albert's pulp and paper mill. Now an Ontario company has purchased the site in an effort to redevelop it.
This site will never be a pulp mill again, that is for sure.
The property along Highway 55 covers over 900 hectares. Chris Rickett from BMI Group says this company is consulting with the province, local communities, and First Nations to redevelop the land and to entice new economic opportunities to the area. A formal master plan is expected in early 2026.
Leveraging the wood assets in the region. And then, the site is well connected, of course, has highway access, has rail access, and it also has, a lot of power generation assets on site. So, it's got some good potential to it.
Really interested in investment opportunities.
One Sky Forest Products had made plans with Domtar to purchase land on the site for an oriented strand board project. An OSB manufacturing plant was in the works, but no deal for land has been signed.
And once the pulp mill closed, there's no place to take on any of the smaller diameter softwood or the hardwood, so there's just all this wastage happening in the forest of big slash piles getting burned.
Fincati says the threat of U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods caused One Sky to pause the project, but all of the pieces are in place for it to start again. The project has passed environmental approvals and has a timber allocation from the province for 1.2 million cubic meters of timber.
There's a need. This mill will go ahead. We just need one in Prince Albert. It's really important here for the whole health of the forest industry. It's just a matter of timing.
One Sky estimates the OSB plant will directly employ 120 people, with more employed in harvesting and hauling. The board is looking to federal programs like Build Canada and Indigenous business programs to contribute, but is not making any predictions about when construction will begin. Lisa Rism, CBC News, Prince Albert.
Swift Current Broncos head coach Dean De Silva has resigned. It comes after the Western Hockey League announced a 5-game suspension against him last week. The WHL says De Silva breached the league's standards of conduct on 2 occasions related to on-ice incidents where he was disciplining players. The team was also fined $10,000 as a result. Broncos general manager Chad Leslie says De Silva's resignation was agreed upon by both De Silva and the team. The move comes 2 years after the Broncos and its then head coach Devin Prott mutually parted ways after he was handed a 5-game suspension for also violating the WHL's standards of conduct. WestJet's rule that bans some power wheelchairs from most of its planes is drawing criticism. Last week, we brought you the story of a Saskatchewan family who had their plane tickets canceled because their daughter's wheelchair weighed too much. But advocates and travelers say the policy is discriminatory and will leave those with disabilities grounded. Gavin Axelrod has more.
Stephen Fletcher has flown on airlines for more than a decade with a power wheelchair like this without any problems. That changed earlier this year. He was booking a flight with WestJet to Toronto when an agent said the wheelchair was too heavy. Fletcher used a different wheelchair for the trip, but it caused pain and pressure sores. He's filed a complaint with the Canadian Transportation Agency.
WestJet is blatantly discriminating against people with disabilities.
WestJet says it came up with a 300-pound limit for mobility aids and devices last year after an engineering analysis. It examined the maximum allowable weight limit per square inch for the cargo holds of its Boeing-made planes. The airline says in response to the complaint that accessibility regulations allow it to refuse transport of heavier mobility aids, and says it followed all laws and regulations. The rule is drawing criticism from advocates.
300 pounds is quite typical. And often they weigh more than that. So unless the intention is to prevent disabled people from flying, they've really missed the mark here.
Toronto-based lawyer Devin Glim says the weight cap should be looked at in a human rights context.
Policy set as this time doesn't account for the needs of individuals.
Meanwhile, Fletcher wants the rule scrapped and hopes others don't go through the same situation. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate have approved a bill to force the release of documents relating to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It will now be sent to the White House for President Donald Trump's sign-off. Public pressure has been mounting on investigators to release the files. Documents that have already been made public mention high-profile figures, including Trump. He has long denied any wrongdoing, but CBC News has learned that Trump intends to sign the bill as soon as it gets to the White House. It comes after he admonished Democrats and Republicans who were in favor of the bill earlier this week on social media. Well, despite the freezing temperatures overnight, Little Red River is still flowing near Prince Albert. Although the ice is starting to creep in over the water a little bit, well, even though it may have a chance to freeze over a bit more this week, it likely will not last long. Temperatures will be on the rise again, and weather specialist Mickey Wolf will bring us the full details in her forecast after the break. Stay with us. A federal inmate from Saskatchewan with a long history of hostage takings will be sentenced this week for unlawfully confining 2 guards in Nova Scotia. Serena Tobacco Juice is one of Canada's longest-serving female inmates. Those in Saskatchewan likely know her better by her former name, Serena Nicotine. But her lawyer is asking a judge to hand her one of the most lenient sentences available in Canada. Richard Cuthbertson reports, and a warning that some of the details may be disturbing.
Serena Tobacco Juice is one of Canada's longest-serving women inmates. And this footage admitted into court evidence is from 3 years ago at the Nova Institution Women's Prison in Truro, Nova Scotia, preventing 2 guards from leaving, grasping a pair of tweezers. This week, a provincial court judge in the case will sentence the 43-year-old after contemplating an extraordinary argument from her defense lawyer. Grant a convicted killer with a record of multiple prison hostage takings the most lenient sentence available for an adult in Canada, an absolute discharge. Tobacco Juice, a Cree woman from Saskatchewan, has been repeatedly shuffled from prison to prison during her nearly 3 decades of incarceration. She's been behind bars since she was 15 for murder, but has never applied for parole. The heart of her lawyer's argument in Nova Scotia court: her life has been shaped by horrifying events in childhood, racism in foster care, by the legacy of residential schools where most of her family were sent, and by years spent in segregation or in other forms of isolation in federal prison, some of which she described in an interview in Nova Institution.
The longest 3 straight years in Joliet, I had my own little cage. They got a little cage for me. They even made a whole room out of pretty much metal. I thought I was in purgatory eventually because I was alone. So I thought I killed myself in that cell actually, and I kept asking the staff members, am I real?
Still, an absolute discharge, essentially no sentence at all for confining 2 prison guards. That's something the union that represents correctional officers says would be hard to stomach.
Impact like that coming out of the courts would have a very negative influence on our staff.
Violence is rising in prisons, he says, and guards feel they no longer have the tools to hold inmates accountable.
It's a clear message that there's not much of accountability for inmates' actions.
The Correctional Service of Canada said in a statement that segregation was abolished in 2019, replaced by what are known as structured intervention units with independent oversight. The prosecution in the Serena Tobacco Juice case says she should be sentenced to 3 years. Her life has been tragic, the Crown says, but she's also inflicted much tragedy on others. And that includes multiple hostage takings between 2000 and 2013. Inmates, a guard, a nurse, some injured. Sometimes she's acted alone, sometimes with others, according to previous court decisions.
I was so young and I was afraid and because I was just 18 and I've heard horror stories as growing up, about prisons, and I guess I was trying to be like how the other women were.
Even if Serena Tobacco Juice receives an absolute discharge, she is still serving a life sentence for murder. Her eventual release, if ever, will be up to the parole board. She says she agreed to be interviewed because she says correctional officials should take medical complaints from women more seriously. She says people change and she's not dangerous. She says she was in agonizing pain the day of the incident at Nova Institution and wanted help. After 18 minutes of talking, the two guards retreat. Others enter. Moments later, it all ends. Richard Cuthbertson, CBC News, Truro, Nova Scotia.
A U.S. federal bankruptcy court has formally approved a plan to settle thousands of lawsuits over the harms of opioids. The lawsuits are against Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin. The deal requires members of the Sackler family, who own the company, to contribute up to $7 billion over 15 years. Most of the money will go to government agencies to fight the opioid crisis. Since 1999, 900,000 deaths have been linked to the crisis in the U.S. A portion of the money will also be distributed to some people with opioid addiction and survivors of those who died. And weather specialist Mickey Wolf is joining us now. It's been a long time since we've had a Grey Cup parade in Regina, Mickey, where there wasn't any snow on the ground.
Ethan, you're absolutely right. It was an overcast day. We saw a little bit of drizzle earlier in the morning this morning in Regina, but overall a pretty balmy day for that Riders Parade. Let's take a look at some of those daytime highs we saw across the province today. 3 degrees for Regina, 5 in Swift Current, 7 in Val Ste. Marie. It looks pretty warm across the south and central regions today. Not quite those November freezing temperatures we would be normally seeing this time of year. As well, taking a look at the current fog advisory, this is what I have my eye on tonight. We've got dense fog happening in Moose Jaw, Swift Current, Maple Creek, kind of the southwest area of the province and a little bit in the west central as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Looking to the skies right now, we're seeing that rain moving out and into Manitoba, but then we've got a little bit of mixed precipitation coming in from Alberta as we get into the evening. Looking at tonight, we will see some snow, possibly a little bit of rain for the south, but overall snow in the central region tonight overnight. And then as we get into tomorrow, that system will move out. We're going to see some clearer skies into Thursday, looking like we'll get a little bit of cloud cover into Friday morning. And then again, we're going to start to see that mixed precipitation coming back into the north. As far as visibility, I just wanted to touch into this briefly so we can kind of see what that might look like overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. So we're looking at very low visibility tomorrow morning in that southeast corner of the province, and that should be clearing up for us as we get into Wednesday afternoon. Taking a look at the week ahead here, we've got a little bit of rain forecasted tomorrow for Regina, and then as we get into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we're looking at some warmer temperatures. Again, we're going to see a warmer weekend before things start to cool down. By Tuesday, we've got a little bit of snow happening in Regina, and we're looking at some snow as well for Saskatoon. We might see just under a centimeter tomorrow, and then things are going to brighten up. We might see that snow stick around a little bit into Thursday and Friday on the ground, but thankfully it won't be too much. Those overnight temperatures are looking closer to normal as well. As we get into Monday and Tuesday, we will start to see more snow picking up in Saskatoon, up to 4 centimeters. So Ethan, we might finally start to see some snow coming into the south and central regions of the province a little bit more consistently.
Okay, well, as long as it's after all the Grey Cup celebrations, I guess. Mickey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A powerful atmospheric river drenched much of California over the weekend, leaving at least 6 people dead. The southern part of the state has suffered significant damage from the downpour. In San Diego, a gas station canopy collapsed, and in Palm Springs, vehicles remain trapped in mud. Some Los Angeles communities recently devastated by the wildfires are still at risk of mudslides, and the National Weather Service is warning residents of potential flash floods. Another storm is expected to douse the state on Thursday. We'll take a look at this. A Saskatchewan artist has created some new designs for the Roughriders to celebrate their Grey Cup win. Chris Chippick from Red Pheasant Cree Nation has incorporated elements of Indigenous culture into images of Rider players and the Grey Cup. Chippick, you'll remember, was also behind the Riders' official Indigenous logo, which is seen here on Rider clothing at the Rider store. That was unveiled back in September of 2024. Stay with us. We have more news and a final look at the forecast when we come back. Welcome back. A ceremony was held Tuesday at the Saskatchewan legislature in solidarity with those around the world who are honoring the victims of the Holodomor genocide. Prayers were sung and a memorial candle was lit as part of the service. Attendees then walked to the Holodomor Memorial near the legislature to lay wreaths. The human-made famine engineered by the Soviet government killed millions of Ukrainians in the early 1930s.
Today recognizes the fact that somewhere between 5 and 8 million people, I mean, that number is unknown. When I was in Ukraine and saw the books that contained my last name and the children that perished, and they were 3 years old and 6 years old, and many people died.
Saskatchewan became the first jurisdiction in North America to formally recognize this moment in history as genocide. It passed the Ukrainian Famine and Genocide Memorial Day Act in 2008. And Mickey is back now with one last look at our forecast.
Well, we might be in for a little bit of snow finally tonight in the central region. Let's take a look at some of our overnight forecasts for Saskatchewan tonight. We are looking at some snow across that central region. We might see 2 to 4 centimeters. Even in North Battleford, we might see up to 5, but overall, a little bit of snow tonight and possibly some showers in the south. In the north, we're looking at a little bit of flurries overnight tonight, and those lows dipping down to -12 in Stony Rapids. Tomorrow in the Churchill and far north regions, we're looking at a little bit of flurries possibly for the Churchill region and mostly cloudy in the far north. Tomorrow in the south, we might still see that fog lingering in the morning hours and some of that cloud cover. And then again, that mixed precipitation, possibly falling as snow, is going to be making its way out of the province by the time we hit the afternoon. So we will see a little bit of a cloudier day, especially in that southeasterly area. Little bit more sun though, so Ethan, not quite snowstorm levels of weather here for Saskatchewan, but we might be seeing that coming to us pretty soon.
Yeah, it had to happen sooner than later, I suppose. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
And that is our news for this Tuesday. For more news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to our CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Of course, that's where you can also find all of our Grey Cup coverage, including of the Grey Cup parade and the speeches that happened Tuesday. And you can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks for watching.